welcome to my lounge. Lighting. Yes, I'm using a ring light for the first time ever. No, I don't own it. My roommate's an actor. And I know you can see it in the reflection. It's probably gonna bug the shit out of some people, but you know what? It's the middle of the night and I want to make a YouTube video. Oh, there's a cat on the table. Today I'm gonna talk about obsessions, hyperfixations, the things that get us through the day. I don't know why I'm talking like this. So I have been thinking a lot about hyperfixations, obsessions, all that stuff lately because, I don't know, I've just been relying very heavily on them these days. And, you know, some people might say that's unhealthy. That's just how I survive. I don't know if it's unhealthy, but that's how I survive. I'm not always in the best place mentally. And I work 2 jobs and I work most days and I am very sleepy and stressed a lot of the time, and that can lead to feelings of depression. And so I need something to help me get through the day, and so hyperfixations are important to me. I've always had an obsession. When I was in middle school, my friend Johnny, who was in my other video, she and I had an obsession off where we just made like presentations about our obsessions and then we baked a cake. Because we're silly people. I never knew how to function without having an obsession. I've been having obsessions since I was, and I always called them obsessions. It's like probably like hyperfixation or whatever. But the only way I knew how to describe it was obsession when I was a kid. So here's I'm just gonna list all of my obsessions that I've had and then talk about like what that means to me. The cat is in a box. Jerome. When I was 5 years old, I had an obsession with My Little Pony. Now, let's be clear that I don't know what version, I think it was like the 90s or whatever version had Minty's Christmas or whatever it's called, or there's several different versions of My Little Pony. It's been so long since I knew a bunch about My Little Pony. But it's not the Friendship is Magic. It's not the first one. It's the one in the middle. This was my world. This was my life when I was 5. I collected those ponies. They're somewhere in my mother's house, I assume. I collected those ponies and I loved those ponies. And I made houses for them out of shoe boxes. And every single night I would line up the shoe boxes and put the ponies to bed. And my father still talks about how long it took and how annoying it was. It would be like, oh, time for bed, time to put the ponies to bed. And my dad would be like, oh, not again. What's wrong with my child? And I had a friend and we would have pony parties where we would drink tea and eat Gushers with our ponies. And my first birthday, I think, it might have been my first like birthday party where I invited like people my own age. I decided I was gonna have a My Little Pony party. Not only a My Little Pony party, a My Little Pony sleepover party. And I did not consult any adults about this, but my best friend and I made invitations for everybody in our class, and we put them in like the little like class mailbox of like little papers that you have to take home. We put one in everyone's mailbox, and it was a My Little Pony sleepover party. And so I planned that, and I was 5, and it was great. And then some lady comes up to my mom at pickup and is like, "That's so nice of you to have the whole class over for a sleepover party." And my mom was like, "What? Huh?" And so then she was like, "Yeah, that's not happening." And we ended up not having a sleepover party, but we did have a My Little Pony party where we decorated our own My Little Ponies because that was my obsession at the time. Then time went on, and I think I was probably about 7 when I became obsessed with Phineas and Ferb. I remember this being like one summer of my life. I'm not really sure how long it was. I think it was the summer like in between kindergarten and 1st grade. And I was obsessed with Phineas and Ferb. And I remember my babysitter at the time was like, you have to watch your morning Phineas and Ferb or you're like not okay. And I was like, yeah, that's true. And I had a lot of like, I was really obsessed with Perry the Platypus. He was my favorite. I had a lot of dolls of him. I was in love with him. I don't know how to break that down. I was obsessed with Perry the Platypus and Phineas and Ferb, and it was the thing. I have a memory of chasing one of my childhood best friends around with my Perry the Platypus doll and like having it try to kill him. I was a concerning child. I remember I spent like an entire afternoon in my babysitter's car. If anyone knows Phineas and Ferb, there's the Doofenshmirtz jingle.
Doofenshmirtz Evil Incorporated!
And there's different episodes where sometimes it's like other things.
Doofenshmirtz holding up again!
And I spent like an entire afternoon with my babysitter just making up what those things were. My favorite one was Doofenshmirtz punching an eagle. I thought that was the funniest thing in the world. Then in elementary school, I had my first like hyperfixation of something that I made up because I do a lot of writing, and I would like I just started making up characters, and that became my hyperfixation, and that was like the thing that got me through the day. I feel like a lot of hyperfixations for me are like hyperfixating on characters, and so I started making up my own characters and hyperfixating on them, and that became a thing that I did, and I made up these characters, and I started writing scripts and forcing my friends to make like TV shows with me. TV shows. And Lobster, who was in the other video, actually started editing those when we met. He would start editing my scripts, and that was like a thing that we did. And I used to force him to play this game called Dialogue, where like we just pretended to be the characters from my story. But then he kept pretending to die, so we wouldn't have to play. And I was like, you can't die in Dialogue. He was like, but it says die in it. So we started calling it Live-A-Log. And Lobster, I would beg him to play Live-A-Log with me, and I miss it. It was fun. Also in elementary school, I saw the third live-action Alvin and the Chipmunks movie called Chipwrecked. And I became obsessed with that franchise for a while. And so I watched a lot of like the newer movies and stuff like that. And this, for those who don't know, that franchise has been going on since the late 50s, so there's like a lot. But I was really specifically into the newer stuff, and that was like a mini hyperfixation that I had in like elementary school. And then I became more obsessed with my own characters. And then now we enter the first like major hyperfixation that most people make fun of me for because I got a little insane about it. I became obsessed with Alvin and the Chipmunks, the newer movies, and then I became obsessed with my own characters, and the Alvin stuff sort of went away. And then it came back in like full force when I was like 12, which I feel might be a little too old to be this into Alvin and the Chipmunks, but let's be clear, it was the 80s version, not the new movies anymore. I have nothing against the new movies. I know nobody watching this knows anything about them or cares, but the 80s version is the superior version. I will fight someone on this. It's just the better version. This is the first hyperfixation that I like learned everything about something and then like have an encyclopedic knowledge of it. So I know the entire history of Alvin and the Chipmunks from 1958 to right now. And I'm no longer obsessed with it, so I have no use for this knowledge, but if you ever need to know something about Alvin and the Chipmunks, hi. I know everything. I can quote word for word like most of the 1987 Alvin and the Chipmunks animated movie, The Chipmunk Adventure.
Please, Dan, I need a little culture in my life. The Eiffel Tower, the Sistine Chapel, the Louvre in Rome. The Louvre is in Paris, Alvin. See, I don't even know where the Louvre is.
So, that's a thing I can do. So that obsession was like my first really intense one. It lasted quite some time. It was the first one that like consumed my life, where it was like all I talked about, and everyone around me was tired of hearing about it. I was Alvin for Halloween once, and then proceeded to wear the red baseball cap that I bought for that costume every single day. I eventually covered it in pins of other things I was obsessed with, but I wore this hat every single day. And because I was annoyed by like the visor of the front of the hat being in my line of vision, this just bothered me for some reason, I would wear the hat like this every single day. This was how I dressed. I do think this was like, this is very weird to say, I do think a lot of my hyperfixations are gender envy related, like characters that I want to be more like, especially guys. And I'm not proud of this, but I think Alvin might have been part of that. That's weird, right? This was also the first obsession of mine that led me to fan fiction. Alvin and the Chipmunks fan fiction is a weird place. And I'm not going to elaborate. If you know, you know. I became obsessed with fan fiction. This was like, I didn't know what fan fiction was before this, but I like all day, I would think,
I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna read fan fiction. I would be at school and I'd be like, ooh, remember that fan fiction I read? I can't wait to read more fan fiction.
it was like it was my world. It was my life. And that's, I think, I don't really know how to describe this feeling, but that's what's most important to me about having an obsession is like you're going through your day, you have to be at work or school or whatever. You need something to get you through the day, because not that you like hate your life or anything, but it's like you don't necessarily want to be doing whatever you have to be doing. And you're in the back of your mind thinking about that fan fiction you read the night before and thinking how you're gonna read fan fiction later that day. And there's something about that that's just really special to me, even though it was weird Alvin and the Chipmunks fan fiction. Also, because it was the 1980s Alvin and the Chipmunks cartoon, I became very obsessed with 80s culture, 80s music. I was like, I need to be born in the 80s. And I actually, that sort of led into another like smaller obsession, which is Billy Joel. I love Billy Joel. This wasn't the kind of thing where I was like sitting up reading fan fictions about Billy Joel, though I want to know if that's a thing. In case anyone was super curious, Billy Joel fan fiction is a thing. I kind of want to read it. But I was obsessed with his music. I was obsessed with him. Also might be another gender envy thing. I definitely at one point texted Lobster and I was like, hey, should I cut my hair like Billy Joel in the 70s? And he replied something along the lines of, you have a tiny bit of self-respect left and that would ruin it. But you know what? I think 70s Billy Joel had cool hair. So, you know what? Give me that 70s poofy hair, please. I got this hat from a guy outside a Billy Joel concert. He pulled it out of his pants. And my dad bought it for me. So the Billy Joel thing was like a smaller obsession, but the Chipmunks would do a lot of covers. And one of them was Uptown Girl by Billy Joel.
Uptown girl, she's been living in her uptown world.
When it became my obsession song, I was obsessed with it. I listened to it constantly. I never shut up about it. And then my dad, who was alive during that time, started showing me more Billy Joel, and I became obsessed with him. I've seen him 3 or 4 times. I'm not even sure how many, actually. But I love me some Billy Joel. And I still listen to a lot of Billy Joel. It is very comforting to me. I also started watching Glee when I was in 6th grade. And that one was like kind of an on and off, a little bit of an obsession. I want to be Kurt Hummel. I don't think that's ever going to change. And especially then, I was obsessed with Kurt and Blaine. And it was my world. A lot of fan fiction was going on. That one like came and went and came back a few times. I was very into that. The person who actually got me into Glee was Lobster. And I think he regretted it after a while, because if you don't know, one of the couples on Glee is Kurt and Blaine, and people call them Klaine, and everyone's obsessed with it, and it's a thing. And I would text Lobster and be like, Klaine, 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 and he got so annoyed with me that he started sending me articles about why Kurt and Blaine should not end up together, which is really funny. Hi.
Look at this.
I took notes.
Look at this.
At work.
A professional over
A
here.
professional.
Look at this guy over here.
In my Billy Joel shirt. Another major obsession was the musical Rent, which is, I went to school for theater, and this is the show that made me, one of 2, I was also Wicked and Rent are the 2 shows that made me want to do theater. But Wicked I was obsessed with in like I want to do this sense. Rent I was like hyper fixated on. On my Alvin hat, I wore Rent pins because those sort of overlapped. And I've seen Rent 8 times, 7 times on tour, and once a children's production. If you've seen Rent, you know why that's funny. They did cut Contact because that's not a song anyone wants to hear children sing.
Harder! Faster!
Yeah. Hey, you were in Rent. I'm talking about Rent right now. Rent. My roommate was in Rent. I wish I was in Rent. I could be Mark. Rent also transitioned into the obsession stuff. There was definitely some gender stuff going on. I was very attached to the character of Angel. And if you know who that is, you can maybe understand that people were very tired of hearing me talk about Rent. I went to musicals with people and I would mention Rent and they'd be like, we're going to see not Rent right now. Can you talk about this instead of Rent? And I'd be like, nope. and I would read fan fiction all the time. And at one point my iPad broke, and I was trying to get a new iPad, and I was asking my parents for a new iPad. And my dad was like, you know, you used to read all the time. You never read anymore. And I was like, yeah, because I'm reading Rent fan fiction on my iPad. There are no books about Rent. And my dad was like, Rent is just a musical. And I was like,
No, it's not. It's my entire life.
that also was like the start of me doing theater really seriously. So I became obsessed with like musical theater in general. But Rent is definitely one of the top ones. That's another one that I have encyclopedic knowledge about. I actually took a history of musical theater class when I was in school, and when we got to Rent, the teacher would be like, who directed this, and who did this, and who blah, blah, and I knew all the answers, and it was just me and that teacher going back and forth for like an hour. It was very funny. Some other obsessions, hyperfixation shows. A big one is falsettos. I love some falsettos. I have a falsettos phone case. I have friends, Johnny, who know the entire plots of musicals I've been obsessed with and have never seen them, because I just get super duper obsessed and I don't shut up. It's like all I talk, it becomes my personality, but it makes me so happy, you know? And the falsettos basically led into an obsession of anything to do with Andrew Rannells, because he was in the revival of falsettos. Anything he's been in, I've probably seen, obsessed over. I want to be that man. My dad used to tell people I had a crush on him, and it's like, no, I want to be him. I want him to be me. I want to be him. He's such a very cool guy. I actually got to meet him, and he's a really nice guy, and he gave me advice on college auditions. Super cool dude. Then I kind of circled back to having my own characters that I was obsessed with, who I'm still I am not very good at making up new characters, so when I get a good set of characters, I just kind of stick with them for a while. And so I've, since high school, been working on the same story with the same characters, different like variations of the story. And that, in a sense, is an obsession too. That's another thing that I think about when I'm trying to get through the day. Like, I'll be at work and I'll be like, those dudes. And it's, yeah, so that's another one. Oh, also Gravity Falls. That book of Bill. This one, I watched Gravity Falls when it first came out, and I liked it a lot. I was like a kid. And I didn't finish watching it because I stopped watching Disney Channel for some reason, and I switched over to Nickelodeon somewhere in like early middle school. And so I didn't finish watching it until many years later. And then over like last summer, not the one that just happened, the one before that, I like became re-obsessed with Gravity Falls, and I bought this book and I named my fish Stan after good old Grunkle Stan. Stan recently died. We had a funeral. I was dressed as a sexy nun. That's another story for another day. My current hyperfixation, if you can't tell by the sweatshirt I've worn in most of these videos, is Dan and Phil. I love those guys. I have seen them live 4 times. If you're into Dan and Phil, it's been quite a week. I'm wearing my Dan and Phil hat right now. I've been having not a great week, and having that obsession to like be at work and I'll be thinking and I'll be like, oh, Dan and Phil. And then I just smile for a minute and I'm just like, oh, it's okay. I have something to think about. And then I get to go home and I can watch it and feel safe. And I think that's what's important about hyperfixations and obsessions, or whatever you want to call them. It's important, I think. Maybe it's not, like when you're a person, the way my brain works, I need that in my life. And also I have ADHD, so I don't know science. I think that means like I have a dopamine deficiency, so like having a little thing to make me happy is really important. I also don't take routine very well, so like just having a thing as I'm going through my routine that I can't stand, and then being like, this thing I can think about, yay. There's also, I think, definitely like for me anyway, like a gender thing going on there. Like a lot of my hyperfixations involve like guys that I want to be more like gay guys, usually Alvin for some reason. And so that's definitely a big part of it for me. I don't know, I just kind of wanted to talk about the importance of that for some people. For me specifically, it's something to make you smile as you're going through your daily life. And daily life, day to day, is stressful sometimes, or not that fun, or you're upset, or you have mental health problems, or you don't like your job, but you have to go, or you're at school and you hate school. And it's just nice to be like, okay, but these little characters are in my head and I love them and they make me feel safe and not alone. And that's really important to me. And I was talking about this in therapy, so I thought I'd make a YouTube video about it. So I have obsessions. I have a lot of obsessions. I don't know how to exist without obsessions. I don't know if that's okay. But I was talking to my therapist about it, and I was like, would it be more healthy if I stopped doing that? And do I even care? Because I don't want to. Like, I mean, for me, it's a creative outlet. A lot of I didn't write a lot of fan fiction in my fan fiction days, but when I started becoming obsessed with my own characters, no one was writing fan fiction, so I started writing. And that's why I started writing, because I was obsessed with these characters. And writing's actually a big part of my life, and I kind of want to be a writer. So, you know, hyperfixation's good. Very good. Though for me, it does kind of become my whole personality, and it kind of drives people insane. But this is how I am, and it makes me happy. And I don't think anyone's gonna actually watch this, but if you do, please comment your obsessions. I love a good obsession. Maybe I'll steal your obsession. I've stolen some people's obsessions. Yeah, so I made a video. Bye.
Is my nose really that pointy?